My name is Skylar Salinas. I'm a DJ, goes by the name Cowboy with a K. I play all sorts of music. I've been a record collector since I was, I think, 12 or 13 years old. So I'm 30, almost 31 now. I collect all genres, but one of the main genres I collect is Tejano music. Tejano music is basically said to have originated in the 20s or 30s, more or less. Back in those days, the music was more or less the same on both sides of the border, whether you're in Texas or in Mexico. It was essentially border music. Back then, the border wasn't so much a border. It was just a river, and a lot of people were born on this side and lived on the other side, or vice versa. Once we got to the 60s and 70s, the music started to split a little bit. Radio stations in Texas played less Mexican stuff, and radio stations in Mexico played less Texas stuff. Conjunto and Música Norteña became two separate things, and it was basically signifying Mexico and Texas. And from that point on, things became very much separated. This is one from the Trio San Antonio. They were mostly active in 40s and 50s. This early period, it was a lot of polkas, and then a lot of stuff like this. It was kind of rapid playing, minimal singing for the most part. During this period, they were still doing some of the German styles like chores and stuff that Mexican bands and Tejano bands don't play anymore. For Tejano, they call it estilo tacuachito, and they call it that because it's hot in Texas and people dance tacuachito style, so it's kind of like people scoot around. It's not so like jumping around, it's more scooting around. But yeah, this record has Santiago Jimenez, Ruben Vela, and some of the early names for Tejano. Narciso Martinez, they call him El Huracán del Valle. They say he was one of the founders of Música Norteña and Tejano music. It's early accordion music. He didn't sing. You got Lydia Mendoza. She was born in Houston in the 30s, I believe, or the 20s. And she didn't do accordion music, but she was solo with her guitar. Just early Tejano figure. She's the original queen of Tejano. Los Toñenos, they're huge in Mexico too. Big with Música Norteña, but they're from Donna, Texas, and that's why their name's Los Toñenos. We had, in Texas, we also had something called Orquesta Tejana, which was us trying to do, it was literally a Mexican-American music, but it was more high class. People would go wear suits, go to the dances. Isidro Lopez was a big name for that. He was from Corpus Christi. And this style is it's kind of like smooth, kind of jazzy. But it was the higher class music for Tejanos at the time. It was kind of more, yeah, it was just smooth and easy. The original bands during the 20s and 30s, people called them conjuntos, and it was called Música Norteña, but the band was called a conjunto. And in the 60s and the 70s, the music started to split off a little bit. You had big names like Ramon Ayala, and then for us it was Tony de la Rosa. When it started to split off, Música Norteña had a slightly different sound, a little bit more relaxed than the accordion. And then conjunto music, they would keep playing the accordion throughout This is an example of Tony de la Rosa and his style. It's a very big name for conjunto music. A lot of Mexicanos or people that are Mexican Americans that grew up with music similar to this. They grew up with people like Ramon Ayala, Los Tigres del Norte. These are first, second generation. So a lot of them, they grew up with música norteña, but they didn't grow up with Texas conjunto, because when stuff started to split, the radio and the airwaves, they didn't play each other's music. Mexico kind of stayed on their side and Texas kind of stayed on their side. Even though prior to that, it was all the same music. However, Ramon Ayala, Nevi Lorena, they were on Texas labels. They played with Texas bands. Freddie is a label from Corpus Christi. Alto, I think that's from the Valley. Another Freddie record. Another Freddie record. We got Los Tigres here. People think of them as, I mean, they're one of the biggest norteño bands ever, and comparatively, someone like Tony de la Rosa, he was making this kind of music in the 60s and 50s, 40s as well. So during the 70s, música norteña got really popular with Mexicanos, and Texas conjunto got popular with Texans. We also had an era of Tejano music called La Onda Tejana, and this was kind of an extension of the Orquesta Tejana era. But a lot of these bands in the 60s and 70s, they were doing soul music, they were doing rock music. They had full orquestas, pretty much, and it was this whole blend of things. And in the 70s, La Onda Tejana, it was a part of the Chicano movement. Big names on that were Little Joe, Agustin Ramirez, Roberto Polito, who was Bobby Polito's dad, Ruben Ramos in the Mexican Revolution. Royal Jesters with Yo Soy Chicano. They made a lot of soul cuts as well. It's pretty much barrio music of all types. Soul influence, like I said. So, moving on into the 80s and the 90s, that's when Tejano became, specifically, that's around the time people started calling the music Tejano versus música norteña or conjunto or whatever it may be. This was the era of Grupo Más. This is the era of Michael Salgado, Selena. I think this record came out in, I believe, in '83, somewhere around that time. And that's about the time that Tejano became the sound that most people think of it as today. It's got a lot of synths. It's also got accordion. This record has Selena y Los Dinos. It was maybe 11, 12, 13, early 80s. This is a pretty proper Tejano sound. This was the era that a lot of this started getting on the radio, like in the late 80s, early 90s. Big national labels like EMI, they started picking up Tejano bands. Selena became a huge deal. Bobby Polito became a huge deal. There was Emilio Navarra, Diego Lee Garza. These people started getting big in the Southwest. They were touring California, Arizona as well. But Texas is such a big state, and there's so many people here that this music was able to be sustained. This is the golden era of Tejano music. Late 90s, there's a lot of new immigrants from Mexico, and they were bringing the old stuff, which are more of a Mexican sound. So that stuff started to take over the airwaves, and Tejano fell out of favor. Part of that, I think, was immigration. Another part of it is just loss of culture. You have multiple generations of people speak less and less Spanish, more and more English. They're listening to more rock. They're listening to rap. Nowadays, it's more or less gone. Growing up, I had a lot of different musical influences. My mom is white and my dad is Tejano, Chicano. And so from my mom's side of the family, I heard old country growing up. My uncle was into DJ Screw, so I heard a lot of rap from him. Heard a lot of rock, metal from that side. From my dad's side, my other uncle was also into DJ Screw. It was just a part of Texas culture at that time during the 90s and 2000s. So I grew up hearing that stuff. I was mostly a rocker growing up, I would say. When I started collecting records, I kept finding Tejano records everywhere. And my dad doesn't listen to Tejano. My grandparents do. I would hear it on the weekends. I'd go to their house. My grandma, who I call my Momo, she would be cooking. My grandpa would be blasting conjunto and Tejano music, dancing, he'd be drunk. Those were my earliest memories of that music. In order to preserve this culture, I tried to make it a point to play these records more. I have so many of these records. People, unless you're from South Texas and your family is a part of the culture, a lot of people don't know anything about any of this stuff anymore. So it's kind of my mission in some ways to keep it going. Hopefully introduce people that appreciate norteño music and cumbia and general regional Mexican music, introduce them to our style, which grew at the same time as their styles. Basically, we're all playing the same music. We're all the same people, whether you're on that side of the border or this side of the border.